some years ago, my Uncle Fancy died. But Fancy, being my father's brother, survived my father who had predeceased him, and I had a very good relationship with my Uncle Fancy. We used to meet every Wednesday night, have a chat, bit of fun, few jokes, bit of singing. He loved singing. But as his life progressed, he was diagnosed with a problem of the heart. And he went to hospital, and they decided they'd put in a pacemaker. They put in the pacemaker, but sadly his body rejected the pacemaker, and he had only a short few hours to live. Now, I went out and visited him in the hospital. He was in the ICU, in a special room, and I went in, and we sat down, and I prayed with him. We said the rosary, and then when we were finished, I said, "Franz, did you have a priest today?" And he said, "Yes." And sat back, he said, "I had confession, I had the Eucharist, and I had the anointing of the sick." So he said, "My bags are packed. I'm ready," he said, "to go." But he said, "I have some very interesting story. I have an interesting story to tell you," he said. And he said, at around 4 o'clock this evening, he said, I had a visit from my mother, my father, and Auntie Pappy. And I looked at him, thinking maybe he's hallucinating, but he wasn't. And I said, "You know, Faz, your parents were my grandparents, and I never met them, and I never met Auntie Pappy. They were all dead before I was born." Well, he said, "They visited me today, and my mother, my father, and Auntie Pappy stood at the end of the bed, and my mother said to me, 'Franz, I have permission to visit you today, to let you know that I will be back for you before dawn tomorrow morning, and I'm taking you with me.'" And I asked her, I said, "Mum, where are you taking me?" And she said, "I'm taking you to paradise because you're ready to go." But she said, "I'd be back at first light tomorrow morning, dawn." And he said, "Dermot, I'm okay. Everything is in order." Now he said, let's tell me a few jokes and sing," he said, "one bar of My Wild Rose of Clare." So we both started singing, and the matron came into the room and she said, "Stop this," she said, "you not realize this man is seriously ill." And he looked at her and he said, "My dear," he says, "it's my wish that my nephew would sing a song for me before I die." She says, "I'm ready." So I looked at Franz and I said, "Francie, what did your mum say to you?" And she said, "Well, I'm coming back for you before dawn." And she said, I asked her, where will she bring me? She said, "To paradise." And I said, "Where is paradise?" And she said, "Would you like a view of it?" And I said, "I would." And then she said, the wall behind them lit up, and I saw into paradise. And he said, "It is beautiful." And he said, "I'm very pleased, I'm very relaxed. And tomorrow night," he said, "Dermot, you will be going to my funeral. I won't see you, but you'll see me. But bear in mind, I'll be at peace." And he said, I said to Franz, "Before I go, will you do me a favor?" I said, "When my turn comes, will you ask the Lord to send you to me to give me an indication of what he's planning with my life?" Because I said, I think this is a very, very important lesson to me, that God is alive and that he is now coming for you before dawn. And I shook hands with him. I went home, got into bed, and sure enough, got a phone call at first light. Fancy is dead. And we went to his funeral that night. So God be good to it.